I still have the text thread open on my phone when I dream about her, the blue bubble glowing like an accusation in the dark. It reads, plain and stupidly hopeful. I'll be right back. I replay it until the letters blur, until the light from the screen paints the ceiling the color of someone waiting to be saved. That's where I want to start, in that impossible, ordinary moment. Because a missing person doesn't vanish in a thunderclap. She vanishes in the way a light goes out in stages. One blink for laughter, one longer one for a pause. The last for everything. I remember the day before like a film left on the wrong speed. Brianna laughed in the kitchen while she made coffee. The sunlight cutting through the blinds into neat bars that dusted her forearms. We traded dumb jokes about broken dorm showers and rent due dates. I said something that made her snort, and for a second she looked younger than the rest of us, like a voice in a song that shouldn't have been hers. She kissed my cheek when she left, quick, perfunctory, like a bookmark, and then she was walking down the driveway toward the bright, indifferent road. She answered my text as she always did. The 3 dots a tiny drum roll before the blue bubble. I'll be right back. I sat on the couch waiting because that's what you do when someone says it. I checked the window, watched the road empty. The clock's second hand moved with surgical patience. An hour later, I called. No answer. 2 hours later, there was nothing but voicemail, then texts unread. Then finally the dull, heavy silence of not knowing. I called friends, family, the police. Those early, clumsy attempts to stitch a person back together with words and procedure. They asked me the usual things. Had she been upset? Did she have enemies? Did she mention leaving? I said no. I thought maybe she'd run to the corner store and lost her phone. I thought maybe she'd stayed to watch a sunrise somewhere stupid and romantic. Hope is a bad anesthetic. The days bled into each other with the awful regularity of someone trying to find breath after water. The search parties, the posters stapled to telephone poles, the late-night calls that always ended with an investigator's professional calm. We're doing everything we can. The town's grocery store cashier watched me like I might fold. Strangers sent prayers. Somewhere in the mix there were whispers that wanted to be facts. Rumors about a fight, a stranger's car, surveillance footage that never showed anything of consequence. I learned how to live suspended, like a moth caught between glass panes. My hands pressed to the cool surface of not knowing. They dug in the woods. They combed the river. They played phone messages back and slowed them down until voices became ghosts. I sat in the squad car once and let the heater blow warm, useless air on my knees while a detective sketched possibilities in shorthand. Runaway, foul play, misadventure. For every theory, my mind built an image to match it. I believed some of them, the bad ones, because fear prefers solid shapes. But the image that clawed at me at night was always the same. Brianna's silhouette walking away from something she didn't understand, and then fading. Not by the force of an enemy, but by the soft erasure that comes when someone separates themselves from a life without meaning to. I kept replaying that text, convinced that the punctuation, the ellipsis of her 3 dots, the casual promise, was a clue. Did it mean hurry back or stay a while? It could have been anything. The human brain is a cruel cartographer. Give it a single mark and it will map an entire country of what-ifs. Nights became a montage of opening and closing doors, the image of her hand on a knob, the sound of her shoes on gravel. I would wake with my heart racing, certain that I had heard the single distinct sound that would explain everything. I never did. One night, As frost crept along the window edges and the rest of the house slept, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I answered before I thought about what I was doing. The reply was nothing but a photograph. Grainy, half in shadow, a corner of a plaid shirt, her shirt, and in the corner of the frame a sliver of something metal that could be a mailbox, could be a car bumper, could be nothing at all. There was no message. My fingers went numb with the wrong kind of hope. I took the picture to the detective, who narrowed his eyes and said, "Could be a hoax." He said lots of things that were intended to be preliminary and ended up feeling like verdicts. This is where I need you to pause in your head for a second and imagine what you would do. If someone you loved disappeared after a half-joking text, if your last concrete memory of them was a small household scene, would you trust the world to hold proof for you? Would you accept that your mind had to step into the gap with its own stories? Or would you demand something harsher, something final? Tell me where you'd draw the line, because I crossed it. I started going through Brianna's things with the reckless thoroughness of someone who believes an object will spout truth under pressure. Her notebooks revealed the ordinary. Grocery lists, half-finished poems, a doodle of a house with smoke curling from its chimney. But in the back of one journal, I found a folded receipt, edges soft with use. The receipt listed a motel 2 towns over, a date, 2 months before she vanished, and beside the address, a name I didn't recognize. It felt like a seam exposed. I followed it. The motel lobby smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. The clerk remembered Brianna because he remembered the way she laughed at a knock-knock joke he tried to make. He handed me a key envelope she had signed out with, a polite, not quite meaningful signature. Inside was the tiniest thing, a paper napkin with a sliver of handwriting. It read, simply, "There's a place with no windows. Be careful which doors you knock on." I thought I was clever to find this. I bought meaning where there might only have been poetry. Then came the night I shouldn't have been out. The line between looking and crossing is thinner than you think, and curiosity is a very small animal that will gnaw until truth, or something like it, opens. I found myself at the edge of the state forest, where the search dogs had once gone quiet, as if even they knew there was an area not meant to be sniffed. My flashlight's beam sliced at the trees, turning trunks into hulking, expectant shapes. That's when I saw a footpath, subtle, trodden by more than deer, and I followed it like a person who had stopped listening to the voice that says, "Turn back." The sound I heard then was not the scream from the movies. It was a rustle, a pattern of small movements. I turned a corner and saw a house I did not know. A shack, really. Its windows blacked out with cardboard, and its door slightly ajar, as if someone had left it ajar on purpose. Inside the doorway, reflected in the weak sliver of moonlight, was a phone screen, blue glow. And I knew before I stepped over the threshold that the text would be there. The air smelled of damp clothing and old paper. There was a chair. There was a mug. There was a sweater I could have sworn I had seen in Brianna's apartment. I picked up the phone. It unlocked with a pattern that was my pattern, because in some curdled, dark way I had used it. The screen lit with messages, conversations with people I didn't know, plans for meetings that sounded like code. In the center of the chain was a message to Brianna. "We keep them until they decide where they belong." I read it again and again until the letters bled. I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. The house was an archive of decisions people hadn't yet made. Names scratched on the underside of chairs. Dates circled on a paper calendar that stopped 3 years ago. a drawer full of old phones with missing batteries. I realized, horrifyingly, that this place was not where someone had been taken and left. It was where people had left themselves. It was a place for the wandering parts of people to convalesce while the rest of them went on. That's when the twist shoved itself into me like cold water. Brianna hadn't been stolen. She had been offered a choice. I had been looking for footprints when I should have been looking for doors. They were keeping people the way you keep unfinished business, stacked, labeled, waiting for a season. I tried to take that knowledge back to the world like proof, but knowledge is slippery. The police called it a squatter's horde, a disturbingly elaborate live-in situation. They closed the case file with professional discomfort. Friends whispered that I had projected grief into a fantasy to make the missing feel less random. The town went on stapling posters until paper became wallpaper. I went on sleeping poorly and watching the streetlight outside until the blue bubble of her text seemed like the last honest thing she'd left me. Sometimes, on nights when the house creaks in ways that sound almost conversational, I dream Brianna leaning in the doorway and saying, "I'll be right back," with a smile that contains every version of the sentence at once. The promise, the threat, the lie, the reassurance. Then she turns and walks into a house without windows and disappears because she's chosen to disappear. That awful human freedom. That's the cruelest thing I know. People can leave without being taken, and sometimes the only proof you have of their leaving is the way they rearranged your life, by being gone. So here I am, still keeping the thread of her last text like a rosary, still telling the story, because stories are the only knives we have to cut through silence. If you've read this far, you know the smell of waiting. Tell me what you think happened. Tell me what you would have done when you saw the house in the woods. Your comments keep this from being a private grief, and maybe in a small way, they keep Brianna's sentence from becoming an absolute. If this touched you, if it made the hairs on your arms stand up, please like, share, and tell me your theories below. Do you think she left on purpose? Did something else happen? Or is there a third possibility we're avoiding? Subscribe for more stories like this, because we keep telling them to hold on to the people who get lost between sentences. And if you're the praying kind, say one for Brianna. If you're the searching kind, keep your eyes open. I still check my phone at odd hours, because some promises sound like they'll come true if you wait long enough.